All right, so welcome back. So frequency histograms, I'm going to talk about in this video kind of grouped and class weight. So how to group your data if you have a quantitative, either continuous or discrete data that you have collected. I'm going to compare that to ungrouped. Okay, so in histograms in general, you might either use groupings or ungroupings. So meaning you're going to chunk data together. So that's going to be grouping, and I'll show that by example because I think it's kind of the best way to show it. And then I'll do another example to show you where grouping wouldn't really make sense. So you would have an ungrouped histogram that you can create. I won't create the histograms here, okay? So I'm going to do the actual creation of the histograms in another video. So I'll put a link, okay? So up above there, once that video is up, so you can see the actual full kind of creation of a histogram, both relative and cumulative ones. Okay, so you're going to be able to do that and see that there. In this video, I just want to explain to you kind of how to group data, how that grouping is created, and then what your class weight is, so what's the size, and then the difference with ungrouped data. So we have here 100 meter swimming times by 20 female swimmers. All right. Now we can, plot these things. They don't have to be in a frequency histogram per se. You can use a stem and leaf, just depends on what you're doing. So I did actually a stem and leaf for this example. So I'll put up another link up above there if you want to see the stem and leaf from this. But if you wanted to create a frequency histogram, so based on this data, and the data points that we have here, so notice they're all different, so they're just swimming times. And time is a continuous variable that we would have. And if I have 20 female swimmers, like how would I create a graph out of that? And this is where these frequency histograms come about. And frequency just means, how many data points fall, within a particular range or at a particular time in this case. So let me first kind of show you how a class weight is created from data points, and then I'm going to slowly explain all the other concepts. So a class weight is defined, or is basically given as a formula where you take your highest, so your highest data point minus your lowest data point, and that is called a range. So the range of your data points, so from your lowest to your highest. All right, so that's what you have there. And then you divide it by, the number of groups that you want to be able to have in your data points. So we have 20 samples here. And I don't want to have 20 groups, individual groups, because doing a chart, a plot, or a graph out of that wouldn't be very useful. So we want to be able to group these data points. And you are actually, if you're the researcher, you choose how many groups you want to have. Sometimes you might choose a group. Let's say maybe you'll choose, 3 groups or 4 groups, and you'll find out that the class weight is not very convenient. So then you might have to force yourself to change and then, create a different number of groups. So for instance, in this example, you can try 3 or 4 groups, and you'll see it's not very convenient to try to find it out. So I'm going to choose a group of 5. All right, so I'm going to choose 5 groups, and so we're going to be dividing. Sorry, let me write here groups. So that's the general. So this is the number of groups that you want to have. And once I find this class weight, you'll see what these groups actually mean. So again, I'm just showing it to you by examples. So here my highest data point, so if you look at this particular data, it's actually 61.82. My lowest data point, so that's right here, is 57.25. So that's my range that I have there. So now visually, and then the number of groups I'm going to have is 5. So if I calculate this, so what I have is 61.82 minus 57.25, and then answer divided by 5 groups, all right, which is 0.914. Now notice this answer is in seconds because we're talking about time. So that range is basically seconds. Now, you don't want to have a class weight of 0.914. So we typically conveniently will round to something. So groups, the weight classes typically will be maybe, you know, between 0 and 5 or 0 and 10. So it's something convenient for the data. So in this case, I'm not going to use 0.914. I'm going to say that my class weight is 1 second. All right, so I'm going to round it up there to 1 second. All right, so it's approximately 1 second. Now, what does that mean? So now with this class weight, so I'm going to just show you what this actually means. So here is my time. All right, so this is my time that I have, right? My swimmers, so I know that all the data points, so here's 57.25 seconds, and then here, let's put this as 61.82 seconds. So what it's telling me is that my range, okay, so basically all of the times, okay, so all of these data points fall somewhere between 57.25 to 61.82. They fall somewhere in between there. And now with me, okay, so finding this class weight, I'm going to break it down into 1 second intervals. So my class weight in this case is just a 1 second interval. All right. And I'm going to conveniently pick this. So I'm not going to start at 57.25. That's not a very nice round number. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for instance, start, which is a little bit earlier. Okay, so I might start at 57 seconds. And now I'm going to use, okay, intervals or the class weight of 1 second. Okay, it's a little bit better. Okay, so now, okay, so with this class weight of being 1 second, okay, so that's the weight of it. So what this is saying is now I have basically created, these are my 5 groups that I have. So here is group number 1. And what that group means is within that group between 57 and 58 seconds, I'm going to find out, okay, all the swimmers' times that have fallen in that range between 57 and 58. So that's going to be my first group. And now, so what we typically will do is, okay, so we'll say between this range, and this, honestly, it's, you know, you can do it like this, okay? So between 57 and 58, so notice I'm not including 58 there. Or you can write it as, you know, 57t, okay, and you include 58, but that's still a range of about 1 second, all right? So whichever one you choose. Now, if you choose, okay, so this side right here, okay, then be consistent, all right? So that means here, so this is going to be 58, okay, t to 59, so that's going to be your second group. So that's this group right here. So those are all the time intervals that fall there. That's your second group there. I'm going to erase this here. Then you have, okay, so your, let's say maybe your third one is going to be 59 t to 60. So that's going to be this range right here. So those are all the times within there, okay? And then you have 60 t to 61 and 61 to 62. And notice those are your 5 groups. 1, second group, third group, fourth group, and fifth group. So you have 5 different groups. And now your goal is to be able to now allocate the data and see, all right, and here's your last one, which data points fall into which group. All right, so, sorry, I'm going to use a different color there. And those are your 5 groups. And by the way, so these things, so for example this, sometimes you can write this instead of writing the less than and equal and so on, you can write it like this. And so we write square bracket where the 61, so because it's less than or equal to, so it's included, all right, you put a comma and you put 62, and then you put a round bracket when it is not included, all right? So notice when it's not included. So your ranges, okay, could be something like this, all right? And then you can do that for the left-hand side. So that will save you a little bit of writing. So sometimes people do that. So I have my 5 groups, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate within those groups the data points. All right. So for instance, between 57 and less than 58, so that was color green. So I'm going to just do it for one of them. So so this definitely there, this definitely there. Now it was less than 58. So there is unfortunately nothing else. So that group would have 2 data points. Okay, so it would have a frequency of 2. So a count of 2. So that's what you would have. In the range between 58 and 59, so in that one, let me do one more and then you'll probably get it. So 58, so that's this one. Which other one is there? 58, this one, this one, this one, oh, this one. That's it. All right. So that group would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. That would be the frequency that we would have. Okay. So for that one, and then you can continue, okay, and do that for the 3rd group, 4th group, and then the 5th group. So what you've created is okay, your groups. So you have 5 groups. You created your class weight, which was the interval. And then within that interval, you basically pick the data points that fall in there. And now you can start to slowly create your frequency histogram, which we're going to do in that other video that I pointed out. All right. And I'll do that one from scratch. Now, so that hopefully explains to you what a group is. You can kind of get a gist, okay, or intuition behind it. And then also how to create your class weight. Again, please remember that your class weight will depend on how many groups you want to have. And sometimes you will choose the number of groups and it won't be convenient. You know, I would encourage you, for instance, if you tried 4 here, 4 groups, you'll notice that the class weight is going to be like 1.14 something, which is actually what I've done before making the video. And that wasn't very convenient, right? So what do? Do I round it up? Do I round it down? And then how do I arrange it? So I just chose 5 groups. Now, if on a test, if you're doing a test and they tell you, then you're stuck, right? And then you have to just work with whatever they give you, and then the class weight you have to adjust. Now, ungrouped, what does it mean to have ungrouped data? So here is something interesting. So there's about 20 students that were asked, and you know, they were monitored, okay, by kind of, they agreed to this study where basically there was a camera that would turn on as you would wake up, and then they would just take a look and see the number of minutes that it took from the time that you woke up to checking your cell phone, right, for social media or messages or something like that. And okay, so this one was done in minutes. Okay, so how many minutes have passed by? All right, so if a student grabs it right away, you know, that would be 0 minutes. Okay, if they wait a little bit, you know, kind of stretch and then grab it, then it will be 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. So this data is pretty crazy. So notice, okay, so you would have almost all students kind of just wake up, and actually people in general, which is unfortunate, they'll wake up and, you know, within the first few minutes, they'll just grab their phone. It's almost like, you know, you can't let it go. So in the previous example, you know, we had quite a span. So now notice in here, we basically, our data points are falling between 0 and 3. And, you know, can we group these together? It doesn't really make sense because our data points are either 0, 1, 2, or 3. There's no need for us to group anything. We don't need to do anything in terms of grouping the things. It's not like grouping 0 to 1 is going to help us, you know, and then 2 to 3. So in this case, an ungrouped decision, so ungrouped, where we're not grouping any data at all, because all we have to say is, okay, so now, okay, 0, 1, 2, and 3 would have been our groups already. Okay, so how many minutes have passed by, and then, we can go ahead and just count 0. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so the frequency, okay, would have been 12 for basically students kind of just picking up their phones right away. And then we can do the same thing for 1. Okay, so 1 minute has passed. Notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So frequency of 5. And then 2 is, that one is easy to see, and then 3 is 1. Okay, so these are your frequency, okay, so the number of data points we have, okay, within 1 minute, within 0 minutes, within 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. There's no need to find a class weight, going from largest to smallest, and then trying to divide it by the number of groups. I mean, in this case, it makes sense to have those 4 groups. So there's no groupings at all, okay? So that may happen if you have a convenient data set where you can just go ahead and just count the frequencies directly, because they might repeat. If we had these data ranges where it was like 0 minutes, 2 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 21 minutes, 8 minutes, and so on. So it was a huge variety. If we had a variety and a big range, that range was very big, then we would group them together, maybe between 0 and 5 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes, between 10 and 15 minutes, okay, and so on. But in this case, no need to group. So I hope these examples give you a sense of what the difference is between grouping and ungrouping, and when it's necessary and when it may not be necessary, how to find the class weight, okay, and how to calculate it, and then how to start creating these groups in between. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in probably the next video. Bye, everybody.